Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. This is the Microsoft 365 Platform Community Call for April 19th of 2022. I am Brian T. Jackett, your host for today. For today's agenda, we've got a couple of great sessions that we'll be presenting. But first, we'll go through our normal updates and news around the Microsoft 365 platform ecosystem. We have a nice monthly update for all of our community contributors. We love everybody who's contributed in there, so we'd like to recognize you, all the companies, all the contributors out there. We'll do our usual together mode for our picture time, and then we'll do demos from Nick Charlebois, who'll be talking about Microsoft Graph Data Connect datasets, some new updates to that. We have Saurabh and Michelle, who'll be talking a little bit about extending Teams apps into Outlook and Office. And then I actually will be filling in for a session on Graph Connectors updates, as well as being able to use Postman collection to actually sample that out. Now, for everyone who is new or who would like to see a little bit more about what is available to us from our resources, we've got a lot of great things that are out there. First, we have 2 YouTube channels. You can find both the Microsoft 365 developer videos as well as our community videos. The developer videos are a little bit more official in terms of being able to see samples and be able to find out understanding about developer platform, what are the different frameworks you can use, lots of great videos and samples that are out there, as well as for our community videos, all the different community calls that we have, along with a number of other different resources. We do the recordings and publish them out there. You can find the links down at the bottom of the page. Also, for our entire ecosystem, a lot of the things are available as an open source. So whether you're looking to contribute would like to do some updates to docs, share issues, other things like that, we'd love to hear your feedback. Lots of great ways that we have repos on GitHub that you can be able to join into, share your feedback, and help kind of shape the way that this community goes forward. Also, a number of great sample galleries. Not only is it great to see demos on our videos like this and our community calls and so forth, sometimes you actually want to go and play with these things in your own environments, whether it's your production environment, a dev tenant, and so forth. Got a lot of great samples out there for SharePoint, for Teams, for a lot of other areas of Viva platform as well. So please take a look at our sample galleries, be able to take a look and see how can I deploy these things in your own environments. But as always, if you're looking for that one-stop shop, how can I go and find all the different resources, all the different invites and links and so forth? You can find that at aka.ms/m365pnp, your one-stop shop for all the various elements that are related to our community. Now, if you are looking for a developer environment to be able to actually test things out, a great way to do this is through our Microsoft 365 developer program. We provide a free E5 developer tenant with 25 user licenses. Great way to be able to actually test out. You essentially have tenant administrator mode in there. So if you need to do development, configuration, other kind of things like that, great way to be able to plug into this. And also these things are now instantly available. In the past, you had to brew a cup of coffee, maybe go out and get some lunch. Now you can actually be able to go and quickly get into this and easily developing with this. You can find more at aka.ms/m365/dev program. Also want to highlight a number of different learning materials that we have available to us. These are all related to the Microsoft 365 platform. Lots of great content out there. This is all freely available. So if you're looking for some training modules, if you're looking for some learning paths, other great courses and content available to you, you can find more at aka.ms/m365/dev/learn. A little bit of a long URL there, but a great way to plug in and see, hey, what's available, and some great content and material from folks inside Microsoft there. And relating back to those samples that we mentioned a little bit earlier, we have released a unified gallery now, a great way to be able to see what are all those different things that are available for us to be able to test out and try. We've got a new location that's out actually on the adoption platform. Great place to be able to plug in and see what are those different things that are available. Again, we did recently cross the 1,000 threshold, so we did take away all the little party balloons and other streamers and so forth for celebrations. We're continuing to roll forward with more samples that are out there. We would love to have you contributing in, so please take a look and see what's already out there. Maybe you want to adapt some of those things, maybe be able to push something new out there. Love to see those new elements that are there. We've actually now crossed 1,060 items that are out there. You can see all of those items at aka.ms/m365/samples. So please take a look at those and feel free to contribute your own. And we'll turn things over to David to talk a little bit about our Sharing is Caring initiative.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Absolutely. You may be wondering, friends, how did all those samples get created? Well, it's because of amazing contributors like yourself. But we understand that if you're new to the community, or perhaps it's been a while since you contributed, there may be a lot of moving parts that may be intimidating to you. The Sharing is Caring program is here to provide you hands-on guidance. And what does that mean? It means we're going to work together with you in a live session that's not recorded, safe space, great opportunity to ask any and all questions and show you exactly how you can get involved from a variety of opportunities, whether it's presenting on a community call, whether it's submitting your first Power Platform sample, SPFX samples, however you'd like to get involved, we would like to enable you and help you. They are, as I said, safe space opportunities, all free. The next scheduled ones are Community Docs, Power Platform. We're getting the rest on the calendar as we speak, but we want to especially highlight next week at this exact date, 1 week from today, right after the platform call, Aviva Connections Extensibility on Adaptive Card Extensions, AMA, with a number of members from Microsoft. Luca, Pat, Alex, John, and Vesa are going to be on that call to ask and answer any of your questions that you may want to get involved with. So don't hesitate. Go to ak.ms/sharingiscaring. Register for any of the sessions, especially the AMA, 1 week from today. We'll keep letting you know more about it. Thank you, Brian. Back to you.
Thank you so much, David. And with that, move into two of our video/podcast resources you can take a look into. The first one is the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast with our very own Jeremy Thake and Paul Schaeflein of our MVPs. Great way to see some information coming in terms of what's announcements out there, what are latest updates and so forth, as well as interviews with a number of folks who are developing in the community, people who are PMs at Microsoft. Love to hear and see what all those new, latest, greatest things are out there. You can find more at m365devpodcast.com. Feel free to subscribe and take a look at that. As well as our PMP Weekly with our very own Vesa and Waldeck. A great way to see, again, also all the latest contributions, what are updates happening inside the Microsoft 365 platform. You can find the video for this at aka.ms/PMP Weekly, as well as on the podcast on pmpweekly.podbean.com. Now, the news for this week was a little bit on the light side. We did have one article on the Viva platform blog, and this is related to being able to work with Viva topics in a number of different experiences. So whether you're inside of Teams, whether you're inside of Syntex with SharePoint, Microsoft Search, there's a couple of new things that you can do, especially related to rolling out inside of Teams. If you want to be able to use things like the hashtags for topics, or if you're in Outlook, you can also use those Viva topics as well in there. So great to see us being able to spread the use of that to a number of different locations. So take a look at the blog post for this, see what is available for this, what things are coming. Some of them are in preview and slowly starting to roll out. Other things are a little bit further along. So great information out there, as well as links off to the roadmap items, so you can stay tuned and see what is available for us. And next, we'll turn things over to, is it Wajidan today?
Yep.
Talk us a little bit about the Teams platform updates.
Thanks, Brian. Hello, everyone. I would walk you through the platform and the documentation updates. Let's start with the platform updates on the left side. First, we have live coding interview sample. So we have a new sample which demonstrates the use of share specific view to stage feature in a meeting. Inside panel, attendees could see a list of predefined coding questions for the interview. Interviewer can choose a specific question and share it in the stage view. Candidate can then start writing a code to solve a given problem. Code written in the editor is in sync with all the participants in the meeting. We have used Signal R to sync the content between the participants. This solution is already published at ak.ms Teams samples under Meetings Live Code Interview folder. Please clone the repo and give it a try. Now let's move on to the doc updates on the right side. We have been working on multiple step-by-step guides. Step-by-step guide is an artifact that has a task-oriented approach, linear topic, and provides an end-to-end scenario and loops you back to the documentation. So we will be talking about the Generate Meeting Side Panel guide today. In the Meeting Side Panel, it enhances your in-meeting experience and help organizers and presenter to have a different set of views and actions. This step-by-step guide helps you to generate Meeting Side Panel to add and publish an agenda. You can find the link for the documentation here. So these were the updates on the platform site. If you have any feedback or suggestion, please post it on aka.ms/Teams platform feedback. The link is available in the footer. You could also follow us on Twitter and configure the RSS feed to get the regular platform updates. Thank you. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you so much, Wajid. Great to see those updates out there for the Teams platform. And a couple of different events that are coming up that we want to make sure that you all are plugged into, signed up for, and ready to go with. The first is our Microsoft Tech Days. This is going to be coming up on May 5th, so less than 3 weeks away. Really looking forward to this. We've got a number of folks that are going to be speaking at this. Folks from Microsoft, including Waldeck and Vesa will be there, as well as a number of our community members, MVPs, and so forth that'll be joining in. Please take a look at aka.ms/techdays/M365. Make sure you're registered and you got that on your calendar. Block the day off. We really want to see you folks there joining in for this. And who could forget about one of our major conferences for developers? Microsoft Build will be coming up on May 24th to 26th, so just a little over a month away. We've got a lot of great content and sessions that are brewing up for this. Registration should be coming very shortly. You can find out more. Make sure to stay tuned at mybuild.microsoft.com. Looking forward to having folks joining in. Be sure to take a look at the breakout sessions, the keynotes. There's also a number of product roundtables. If you actually want to go and talk to the product group members, all the folks who are actually building the services and APIs that we love, you can give your direct feedback to those folks. So love to have you all join into that. Make sure you register once that is available. And to the question in the chat, no, it will not be in person this year. This will be another one of our remote sessions, but do look forward to the future when we can all get back together in person and share some great feedback and camaraderie. And with this, I'll turn things over to Vesa to give us a little bit about an update on our platform with our community members.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian, on that one. So we once again have the monthly summary out at our platform community blog. So if you go there and have a look on that, and that is the classic summary, which we started actually building or writing back in 2014. And we've been doing this for quite a few months now, considering almost a decade long when we started doing this. But main idea of this one is to list all of the people and the contributors internally and externally who've been actively involved within our Microsoft 365 platform site. So the list and including all of the blog post videos and all of that stuff. So this time we had 4 slides of contributors. So I needed to split the number of people to 4 different slides, which is actually a record. We're not going to call all of you because that would take too long, and we do have call demos coming out. But this is from A to D. So thank you for being part of this community. This is from A to K. So a lot of people across the world actively involved. Let's go to another one as well. L to P, so from Lance to Prasad, and a lot of familiar names, but also a lot of new names within. It's great to see new people coming involved and starting contributing, because it is as easy as clicking the edit button, for example, in the docs, and then starting from there. And coming back on the sharing is caring initiatives, those are there to help you to get started. And this is from R to Z, so the last slide on the external contributors. Now, on the following slide, we also have the images or the logos from those companies which we have a permission to show. So those companies who allow their employees being part of the open source and contributing community design, and they have explicitly give us the permission to show the logo in here. So thank you for them as well. And then the final slide is super busy slide related on Microsoft people, which is great to see that this number of people is growing all the time as well, who've been actively involved within the last month. So not forgetting about the internal people who are quite often actually using their weekends, their evenings to be part of the community as well. So thank you for them as well. Cool. I guess it's time to then go to the group photo. So Seb isn't here, so Seb cannot be the example, but Todd, you're on the middle on the front row. So I will put you on the spot of doing the example, and I will start sharing my screen. There we go, and now we can actually capture in here. We have 50 seats in the room. I will put my camera on as well. We're not yet recording quite. Let's wait until the fullest room. We're in the green room, outside room today. It is spring or summer is coming in Northern Hemisphere, so I guess it's good to start doing that. I think we are max out, so I will start the recording in a second, and let's do some hand waving, everybody. and the way for the other people in the community. Thank you for once again being part of the community and being part of this calls. These are super important for us as well. All of the feedback what we're getting from the chats and everything is super, super important. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And coming back on the in-person comment, I cannot confirm this, but maybe Ignite will be in person this year, but let's see. There's some rumors on that. But Brian, let's get back on your slides and move on the real stars of the day.
We're bringing the slides back up. A big thank you again to all of our community members. This really wouldn't be possible without you. We love having all of your feedback, all your contributions, samples, and so forth. Great to see everybody participating in. And we're over 200 and it's about 30 people today. So great to see folks joining in with us as we continue with our community calls.
Let's start with Nick and go about the latest Microsoft Graph and Data Connect datasets.
All right, so quick update on the data sets for Microsoft Graph Data Connect. Before we actually dive into what's new with regards to the data set, I just want to do a quick overview of the different components of what makes the Microsoft Graph ecosystem. Right, the first component is something that I think we're all used to, which is the REST APIs. They've been around for many years. Those allow for CRUD type scenarios, right? Transactional scenarios where you can go and create, read, update, delete data inside of Microsoft 365. They are, however, throttled, which means they're not built for large data exports, if you want, right? Because you only have a certain limitation of how much data you can get in a certain time frame. The second component is the connectors. So connectors are built to ingest data inside of Microsoft Graph, to bring your on-premises data inside of the Microsoft Graph, to allow you to build search-related scenarios, to just improve the experience, the overall experience, let's say on the Office portal, the office.com, and so on. And then the third piece, which is really the focus of this session here, is Microsoft Graph Data Connect, which is really built to allow bulk data access to generate your own insights and analytics over a period of time. Right, so when you're using Microsoft Graph Data Connect, there is an Azure play, which means that the data that you're exporting will be exported into Azure using either Azure Data Factory or Azure Synapse. And this is something I want to touch on. I know the focus is really more on what's new with data sets, but I want to leave time at the end to just introduce the new support we have for Azure Synapse. And the advantage of using Microsoft Graph Data Connect, well, the first one is you're not going to be subject to throttling. So you can extract a large amount of data without hitting any throttling limits, right? So you can extract millions and millions of emails, for example, or calendar invites if you want to be able to generate your own insights. The other advantage is you can scope it down to an audience. You can say, I only want to get the information for people that are part of the legal and HR team, for example. And the third thing is you can actually scope it down at the field level. So for example, if you want to go and generate insights to understand how people are collaborating via email inside of your organization, you don't want to extract the body of the email. You don't want to go and extract the attachments, right? You don't care about that. The only thing you want to know is who are the actors. So you can go in and essentially come up with what I call a data contract and say, all right, I want to extract the emails from the legal team for the past 3 months, and I only want to get the carbon copy and the BCC field. That's all I care about. And that will honor the data contract and extract the data inside of an Azure storage account that only contains the selected fields. Okay, very important. And the data will be stored as JSON. So you can go in and load it directly within Power BI, or you can just use something like Azure Synapse to build your extract, transform, load pipelines. Quick update on the data sets. Now I need to talk about the legend here. So items that are in black in the currently available column, these are items that have been available for months, right? These are items that we've had since almost the beginning of Microsoft Graph Data Connect. Items that are in green are items we've recently released, meaning that in the past 2 to 3 months, these are new data sets that we made available. The ones that have an asterisk beside, they're currently available in private preview, but are going to be released within the next few weeks for general availability. So let's quickly glance through the new items in here, right? One of the things we are working on is to bring group conversations to the forefront, being able to extract information about groups conversation that you have in Outlook. The second one that we released about, I want to say 2 months ago, is the inbox dataset. Now, you might have a question around, all right, so looks like we have the messages, which is the email, we have the sent items, and now we have inbox. What's the difference between them all? Well, it depends on your scenario. So what we're trying to do is make it as easy as possible for you to reduce the overall number of items that you're extracting, right? To make it easier to build your insights based on your own scenario. So the messages data set includes everything. Emails that have been sent, emails you've received, and doesn't really matter in what folder you've actually stored your messages. It's all the emails. The sent item, well, that one's fairly easy. It's the emails you've been sending, right? So that will normally help you remove duplicates. So for example, if I'm sending an email right now to 5 of my colleagues, that will actually count as 6 emails, right? 1 for each recipient plus 1 for me. But if I'm only interested in knowing how people are using emails internally, then sent item will help reduce that overall data set that you're going to be extracting. Inbox, on the other end, is really just the emails that you have in your root inbox folder. Very important. Now let's talk about the new groups data set that we've released. So we released 3 new groups data set, the group details, which contains information about, like, is this a public or a private group? Is this a mail enabled, right? So it's really more around the configuration of the groups, the group members, and the group owners. One thing that's really important to note is with Microsoft Graph Data Connect, the data sets are normally metered, meaning that you're going to be charged per 1,000 items that you extract. Everything that is beside Azure AD in here, those are all free data sets, as well as the data sets while they're in preview. Okay? So the group details, group member, group owners, those are really more what I would consider supporting data sets. So those are completely free to use. So if you want to just like get started with Microsoft Graph Data Connect, that would probably be a great one to get started with. Now let's move on to Teams, right? So we just released last week the private preview for call records. Call records contain information about who's been joining the meeting, for how long was the meeting, and then pretty much information about when was the meeting started, when was it ended. We have information about channel details, right? That is also in preview. Essentially information about, all right, so this channel is a private channel. We have Giphies enabled. We have, right, so all the settings for the different channels. Chats, we've had that for a long time now. Those are private chats, so one-on-one and group chats. And we've also released a private preview for the standard channel conversation, right? What we mean by standard here is that we still don't support private channels. Those are just standard channels, all the messages that have been, all the message thread that happen in the standards channels. On the SharePoint front, we have a document sharing information data set, which contains information about all the sites, all the lists, and all the items in your SharePoint Online environment, along with information about the users the document or the item is shared with, right? So it'll tell you, for example, all right, so this file here is shared with 20 people, and 5 of them are external users, for example. So you can actually build dashboards around this. And this is one I wanted to bring up here, right, just to do some quick ideation. But essentially, one of the demos we built, right, it was just to quickly understand, all right, so how are documents being shared externally? Right, so for example, here, these are all documents that have been shared with external users on my HR site. So I can go in and have a look here and say, yeah, all right, so there's this document called staff rationalization, or there's this document here called secret recipe that has been shared with John outside of the enterprise, right? So trying to understand how our documents, well, I mean, information leakage is a big problem, right? But also understanding how people are collaborating with users outside of the organization. Another type of visualization we could create is try to understand, all right, what are the top externally shared files, right? So for example, here, this PDF document is shared with 19 external users, right? Like what's in there? Why is it like so popular, and why is it shared that often with external users? Same goes for the overshared sites, right? Like what sites are being overshared? So there's this site here, right? CEO Connection shared with 63 users, right? Maybe this is something we actually want to flag and investigate. Like why is this site here that should be limited to the CEO's organization shared with so many users? Try to understand as well how people are using sharing links inside of the organization, right? So right now I can see that there were 210 links generated that could be shared with anyone inside of my organization, whereas I only have about 23% that were shared with specific people. Maybe there's some training that I need to do with regards to this. Okay. Ralph, I just saw your question. So if you go to the Azure page search for Microsoft Graph Data Connect, all the information around the pricing is listed there as well. Groups, right? Real quick, right? Try to understand, all right, so how are we creating groups based on the visibility, right? 57% of all our groups are created as private, right? What groups are mail-enabled overall? I mean, these are just really, really basic insights that you could create, right? Understanding how people are actually creating groups over time and then drill down into the actual days during the month. Team call records. Try to understand, like, all right, here are all the meetings over time. And of course, this is a tenant. The tenant I use had very limited data. But try to understand, like, how are people having meetings during the day, right? Are these ad hoc meetings, meaning that somebody actually just pinged you on IM and called you directly? Or are those scheduled meetings? Very important. You can see that in my environment here, even though I have very a limited set of meetings, almost 67% of them were ad hoc meetings, right? That in some organization can be a productivity killer. So try to understand this. Average time spent per users in meetings, right? You can see that I'm spending about 150 minutes on a weekly basis in meetings. The average length of the meetings in my organization, right? So those are just some insights you can actually generate using the various data sets that we offer. Now, as far as data sets that are soon to be released, meeting transcripts is one of the big ones, right? So just as an ideation, imagine being able to just do some cognitive services against the meeting transcript to highlight some of the action items that were discussed. Right? That is one thing. That will also include information around when people join, what reaction people had, right? Like, did we have thumbs up when we mentioned a specific topic? When we mentioned Microsoft Graph Data Connect dataset updates, how many thumbs up did we get? Right? Being able to do that analysis as well. Usage around SharePoint, understanding how people are using files when they're creating files, deleting files, moving files. And then on the backlog, we have plans to bring into Microsoft Graph Data Connect information around things like call quality data, right? Private and shared channels, of course. This is one that we need to bring since we have standard channel. Information around files and list items in SharePoint, so the metadata around those files. We're looking at opportunities to bring in some of the Yammer information as well, right? Community details, conversations, and so on. Outlook tasks. And then anything that is exposed through a GET in Microsoft Graph is a potential candidate to be brought over to Microsoft Graph Data Connect. Real quick, I want to talk about Azure Synapse integration, right? So as I mentioned, we recently introduced support for Azure Synapse Analytics, which means directly within Synapse, you can go in and create pipelines that will allow you to extract your Microsoft 365 data using Microsoft Graph Data Connect. And then from there, you can do all transformation you want. You can use a no-code approach using like data flows. You can use your Spark runbooks if you want to do a bit more coding. So really, everything is baked in the Synapse workspace. And just as and one thing we've heard is that it is challenging for some people that never played with Synapse or Azure Data Factory to get started. So one thing that we have been working on and we're working on improving is this new copy data wizard, which allows you with a single click to just go and automatically build a pipeline to extract your data. So I can go in and say, I want to run it once, I want to run it on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. Click next on this. I'll just select my Office 365 connection, and then it'll list all the data sets that I have available. One thing we are working on is improving directly the inline documentation around, all right, so that's good. You have the contact data set, but what does it contain, right? So we are working on this right now, but one thing I can do is, all right, I want to get my inbox and my Teams call records. Click next on this. Directly from here, I can go in and say, all right, so for my inbox, I want to go in and bring the data for my legal team, right? So really, WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get kind of approach, right? Everything is very visual instead of you having to create your pipeline from scratch. I want to get all the emails from the past month, right? I could do the same thing, select, all right, so for Teams call record, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go in and this time I'm going to select, let's say, the finance team, right? So really, sky's the limit here. You can go click next on this. Yes, I need to specify a filter in here. Apologies for this. And then what will happen?
30-second warning, Nick, as we'll get to our next presenter.
All good, I'm done. So essentially then what will happen is it'll ask you, where do you want to go and store it? Click next, it'll create the pipeline and it'll automatically trigger it for you and start the export process. So what I'll do is I saw a couple of questions in the chat. I'll answer them in the chat, but I appreciate you folks having me, and we're moving on to the next speaker. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you so much, Nick. Great to see all the new data sets. We did see a lot of questions in there. Please do follow up with those in the chat. But it looks like some good excitement and some other feedback for folks on what would be some future things that we're looking for. With that, we'll turn things over to Saurabh to talk to us a little bit about extending Teams apps to some new platforms. Saurabh, floor is yours.
All right, so hey everyone, I'm Saurabh Bhatia. I'm a product manager on the Microsoft 365 team. I think this is the first time I'm presenting with this audience, so thanks for having me over. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we are trying to extend Teams and bring this concept of personal tabs across Outlook and Office.com. This was previously announced at Ignite, so if you were tracking those announcements at that point, this will be a little bit of a refresher, but if you aren't familiar with this, then I hope you take away some of the key points and start considering how you can start building your apps across all these hosts. So let's start off with what are personal tabs in Teams, right? They're basically just web apps that are scoped to a single user. They can be pinned on the left pane so that you can easily access them. Users don't have to leave Teams in order to access the app's capabilities. You're right within Teams, and you can just continue doing your work in Teams itself. Now, in a hybrid workplace, people are often working in multiple applications. In addition to using Teams, they could be using Outlook to send emails or Office.com to collaborate on documents. And that's one of the key reasons why bringing tabs to Outlook or Office.com will help bring your application to where people are already working. It lets you provide a better connected workspace for a more focused and increased productivity scenarios. And we wanted to make it really easy for developers to extend their apps so that they can show up across Teams, Outlook, and Office.com. You can write your app once and then choose to deploy it to any of these hosts. So what I'll do now is I'll just switch over and just show you how easy it is to do this. Hopefully you can still see my screen. Yep. So I'll be taking this sample app, to-do app. It's on Teams FX samples, and this was initially started off as a Teams only app, but I'll talk a little bit about how you can extend it so that it also runs across Outlook and Office.com. So all this app is doing is it shows up as a personal tab, and then it's giving you an example of how you can add to-do items and track that in Teams. I'll switch over to VS Code using the Teams toolkit. Hopefully people might be familiar with it. If not, it's a great way of amazing tooling to get started with building your apps for Teams and now for Outlook and Office.com too. Just taking the sample app, and I believe Michelle will be linking these examples in the chat itself. So, and we'll be sharing those out too. So with the sample app, there are two key things I've done here. One is there's a manifest, which defines what the app does. And by default, it only runs in Teams. The key thing I'm updating here is just the manifest version. This is still in preview, so I'm updating it to M365 Dev Preview. And that indicates that this app is now going to run across Outlook and Office.com. The second part of it is, let me just pull that out. The second part of it is I'm going to start referencing Teams.js 2.0 beta. This is the newer version of Teams.js that is now compatible across all these host apps. It's not just running on Teams, but it can also run in Outlook and Office.com. So just with these two updates, I can actually now run the app, and I have that already running so that you don't have to wait for the F5. And here is the app. It's sort of pinned to the left rail in Teams. I can add tasks to it. Another to-do item added from Teams. And then that same app will show up in Office.com itself, added to the left rail over there. I'll just refresh it because it's not anything fancy. It's just a web app. And the thing that I just added over there will now show up on Office.com too. So as an end user, you don't have to keep switching between apps. It's the same app that's available across Outlook, across Teams. I missed showing Outlook over here, but it's the exact same app. I can check this item is done in Outlook, and that thing automatically will get synced with Teams or with Office.com. So one app runs everywhere, automatically shows up. I didn't have to change any code from that existing Teams app to make this run across all these hubs. Primarily because this specific app isn't really using any hub-specific capabilities. This was, just a simple to-do application. In the next couple of, I think we're planning to come back and show some more demos. We'll be showcasing how you can take existing Teams app and utilize host capabilities that are specific to, say, Teams or Outlook or Office.com and deliver differentiated experiences across these. So that's a very quick demo. Hopefully that interests you in trying to build these apps. I will flash some useful links here, and we'll also put that in the chat, and happy to answer any questions.
Taking a look at the chat, I do see a question from Russell. Can the app get access to the mailbox? Sorry, but I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, there's a couple of capabilities around composing mail that we can talk about. It's not really accessing emails, if that's what you're interested in at the moment. So the app could kick off mail and let you compose a mail. It's not really letting you search emails at the moment, but that could be something we go look at in the future.
Yep, and just for things like that, you could think of Microsoft Graph APIs as a way to go and access specific user data. So if you're talking about Teams chats or files or emails, groups, anything else like that would be something that just, again, using existing Teams functionality, the SDK stuff, to go and access that.
Yep, exactly. That's a good point. Yeah, you could just leverage Graph and pull that data in, and then this ends up being a nice way of just showing that information right within the host application.
I see another question from, I think it's Masoon. Does this have full sync with M365? I'm not sure I understand the question specifically. If you want to type some more into the chat window to give us some more details on that. And then Nick has a comment about need a UI framework which detects if it's in Teams or the rest of Office and shows either North Star or standard Fluent UI. Any comments on that, Saurabh?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I'll quickly switch back. So we do give you information about which host you're running in. So I'm running in Teams, I'm running in Office, and based on that, you can kind of switch over and show the right UI. There's a few improvements we are looking at. Right now, you'll get kind of the context of the host app and the team that it's running in. Would love to chat offline maybe on. We're trying to look at how we extend that capability so that you almost get all the information about what kind of teaming the host app is using, and you can adapt to that.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that. And it looks like Masoon said Michelle shared some answers on his questions. I think we're good there. So I really appreciate this. Great to see kind of the first peek at this. And yes, we do have a couple of future sessions that will be lining up to dive a little bit deeper into this. Appreciate the links being shared, and looking forward to folks being able to share more about this. Thanks so much, Saurabh. Really appreciate you being able to share this in here.
Thanks, folks.
And with that, I will pull up my deck. Here we go. So I'm going to give a quick little what's new and coming with Microsoft Graph Connectors, and show a little bit about what are some of the things you can do with Postman to be able to work with Graph Connectors as well. So for those of you who are unaware, Microsoft Graph Connectors is really about being able to take external data and have that data surfacing in a number of different native Microsoft 365 experiences. There's a few of them that are already GA, including things like search. And we're working on, in development as well as in preview, a couple of other experiences. So search being great for end users to be able to actually go out and search for that content. But there's other areas like intelligent discovery where we can actually show content to you based on different activities, things that are going on in the system. So knowing like what are recommendations for you, what are recently accessed files. In the past, that was all content that was just inside of Microsoft 365. But now we're actually opening the doors for that to be also from external content. There's other areas for compliance in terms of e-discovery. There's a lot of things with the Viva platform that we're looking to integrate with, as well as Context IQ, kind of a quick editor to be able to reference content if you're inside of Outlook, if you're inside of Word, other areas like that. And also there's some preview experiences already available inside of the different people profile cards. So being able to see, hey, content from an HR system or other areas, want to be able to show that directly with that external content as well. And in terms of external content, what could that be? Well, there's actually a lot of different data sources for this. It might be a on-premise database. It might be a line of business system that you've created. might be a third-party SaaS service, it might be a file share sitting on some kind of server. And so the idea is that having that content, being able to integrate that directly into Microsoft Graph, then we can actually be able to surface that in those different kind of experiences. So these are none of the ones that we've got kind of lined up that are coming in the future, but more about that as we get to some of our further conferences down the road. Now, in terms of what does this actually look like? To me, seeing is really believing, being able to actually see like where does this stuff show up. So taking that first example of doing enterprise search, when I think of going into SharePoint or Office.com or things like Bing, I can be able to go and find kind of our all content coming back from sites, from people, from files, from news articles, things like that. But with Graph Connectors, we're actually introducing this other kind of external content as well. And so the idea here is that when you're on that all tab, we can actually show what we call a result cluster. And this can actually be coming from that external source. So if you have something come from, let's say, a set of research articles that you've got in some kind of third-party system, maybe you've got content, again, in an on-prem database or some other kind of repository, we can actually integrate that directly onto the all tab and show that content in there. It is fully up to you in terms of as the connector author, being able to modify the lookout and feel for this. So we are using adaptive cards to actually go and render that content out there. If you want to display images, if you want to display logos, text, URLs, snippets of the actual content in there, maybe even like who modified this or what was the date for things. Those are all things that you can be able to go and actually update into there. Or you can actually go ahead and create custom verticals for this. So if you want to scope your content to show directly inside of that custom vertical out there, another option for you to be able to show that content in there. And again, now we're actually going beyond just that little small cluster of results. And now you can actually get the full set of them, be able to do some things like filtering, and be able to actually get a little bit deeper into that content. So as long as you've properly defined your schema for that graph connector, we actually go ahead and actually use some of that metadata properties to further refine that content that's coming through. Maybe you've got what's the source for this, maybe the file type for this, the extension, maybe some kind of date filters. Lots of ways to be able to interact with that content and then be able to show it out there on the search results page. Now, a couple of recent releases that I do want to cover for folks. Just we may have had a blog post on all these different items, but just kind of recap some of the things that are out there. We do have some doc updates out there to associate with these things. The first thing to mention is we do now actually support a limited set of schema updates. In the past, when you defined your connector, you'd specify that schema that tells us, hey, here's all the metadata properties that I'm looking to update for this. So this is going to be the title, the modified date, the author for this, the actual content of the things that are out there. In the past, if you wanted to add a new property, if you wanted to add a new semantic label to that or an alias or similar kind of things, unfortunately, you had to tear down and recreate the entire connection out there. These days, we actually do support some limited number of capabilities in terms of adding new properties out there, adding new labels, modifying the aliases that are out there. So there's a few of these that are supported in kind of a initial release for this. We are looking at additional different types of scenarios for this. And now, when you think about this in terms of what kind of things might require re-ingesting content, there are a few scenarios that does be the case. Again, if I'm adding new properties onto there, I need to basically re-index that content so I have the latest and greatest out there to show in search results, to show in the other experiences out there. So in our docs, we do call out what are those scenarios and which ones do require re-ingestion. Just a note to everybody that yes, there are some new support for scenarios like that. Additionally, the permissions that we use for our OAuth authentication, in the past, they were a little bit limited. We only had essentially, hey, go and write to all connections out there or write to the ones that I own. But that was using application permissions, basically those unattended kind of service account level access into this. We didn't really have as much support for delegated permissions or for as fine-grained of permissions. Through talking with a lot of our partners and a lot of our customers, we realized, hey, there are a lot of other scenarios that we do need support. So we worked on adding that support into there, and we're actually very, very close to publishing the docs updates to this, but they're actually live in the platform. So if you'd like to go out and test these things out, we do have support for additional properties that are out there. Stay tuned for the docs updates that should be coming very, very shortly. And lastly, for our access control lists, how we actually secure the content out there. Yes, every single item that you push in through a connector, these can be permissioned. So if you have a Azure AD group, if you have an Azure AD user, or we even support things called external groups, you can kind of define those however you'd like to for the permissions on this. We've simplified the model for how you specify what that property looks like. And so ingesting the content with that ACL on there, we've got a little bit kind of a streamlined process for that. So good to see some platform updates that are coming out for connectors and making it a little bit easier for developers to actually go forward with those elements. Also, a quick note that we do have some updates in terms of Microsoft built connectors that are out there. There's a couple of different sources, from Jira to Confluence to ServiceNow and so forth. Those are actually been released to GA within the last couple of months. So great to see more platforms, more support, and additional things are being supported with those Microsoft built connectors. Now, what is coming? There are a couple of different things that we'll share a little bit more about. We've got some roadmap items for some of these, other ones that are on their way to being released. So talk a little bit more about these items. The first is increased scale. In the past, we only supported 700,000 items per connection. And when you combine that together with the 10 connections allowed for the entire tenant, that meant that you only had 7 million items for the entire tenant there. Very soon, we're actually in the midst of rolling this out, so this will be here pretty shortly. Some of you may have already seen this. Others, it's coming to your tenants very quickly. We're actually increasing that scale now to actually support 5 million items per connection. So combine that together with the 10 per tenant, and you actually have 50 million items that will support for an individual tenant out there. You can actually see a screenshot of one of our demo environments. Here are a couple of our connections that have that increased scale out there. So you can already see that they have, again, the limit for 5 million items, and they're storing very close to that in terms of the number that are in there. And then pairing that together with what is available from a throughput perspective. Currently, it is set at 4 items per second that you can be able to ingest at a time. With this increased scale for number of items, we're also increasing the throughput. So we're going to be getting up to 20 documents or 20 items per second that you can be able to ingest. So a lot faster for us to be able to fill that connection up, as well as do things like reindexing or incremental crawls, things like that to go and update. So great ways to see additional scale being able to go with that. And then lastly, we did actually have a previous community call presentation on this. This is for our Graph Connectors SDK. If you are building your own line of business or kind of your own custom connector out there, it is possible to use this SDK to actually go out and kind of ease the on-ramp for this. Basically, it provides a number of the kind of behind-the-scenes plumbing, some of the different kind of sample code snippets that you'll need to be able to actually go and implement these things. Please take a look at the previous community call. We'll make sure that that's in the playlist out there so you can take a look and see how to build connectors with the SDK. With this, I'll jump over to our docs so I can actually show you a little bit about how to be able to build your connectors. And today we'll focus a little bit on using Postman to go and do that. So the first thing I want to do is highlight that we can go out to our documentation for this. The first page to go to is aka, if I can type, .ms/graph connectors API. And when you go to this page, you can see a little bit about using graph connectors, overview for this, how can you build things. The area that we want to go into is this use Postman on the left-hand side. And with this, you can see that we can actually use the Postman collection for Microsoft Graph. We've published this for quite a while now. And the idea is that, hey, with a lot of different resources on Microsoft Graph, I may want to be able to test these things out. Great to be able to use things like Graph Explorer, which is kind of one of our websites to be able to test out different APIs, queries, see samples, see different snippets and things like that. But there's some scenarios that you can't do in Graph Explorer. One of the primary ones is being able to actually use application permissions. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that's being able to do like service accounts or kind of unattended queries against things. And so with Graph Connectors, there are a few key scenarios that you have to use application permissions for this. And so because of this, we do have a sample set of different APIs and requests that you can make. And we built all those requests for Graph Connectors, and we bundled them together with the Microsoft Graph set of APIs and samples that are out there. So this article out here on this page, this will walk you through a little bit of how do I actually go and clone, kind of fork that repo out there? How do I import that into Postman, be able to work with the different APIs that are out there? It'll show you a little bit about actually creating your own Azure AD application. Here we go, all the steps through this, configuring authentication. And the nice part is all these things are basically baked into the Postman collection. So really all you need to do is fork that repo, be able to pull it into your environment and hook in what is your Azure AD application that you're using for this. So once you've got that, a great way to kind of get up and started with being able to call against Graph Connectors, test things out, and you'll see what you got there. So with that, I'll flip over now to Postman. And here you can see, I'm going to scroll all the way up. Here is our Microsoft Graph collection. I've already imported this into my own environment. I can go under application, which is going to be where I've got a lot of my different sample queries going against Graph Connectors. And you'll see we've got this split out in a couple of different areas. There's some of the initial things for creating your connection, actually setting it up. If you need to register your schema, you can go ahead and get the schema. You can go and get the connection, all those kind of great things for doing just the administration up front for things. We also have for doing content sync. Now, this is my own custom Postman collection out there, so I've got a couple of additional things that you may not see in your own. This is just for me for doing demo purposes, but I can go ahead and do the upserts. This is either an update or an insert for a number of different items out there. I can go and get items. I can do a partial update. I can delete items. So great ways to go and interact with that content that's out there. And as well, if you want to do things for identity sync, as I mentioned before, you can set those ACLs, the access control lists out there. And for this, sometimes you actually need to go and do those external groups. So here's a great way you can actually test those things out, be able to go and create that external group, be able to populate that with Azure AD users, and other kind of ways to integrate with that identity areas. Now, I see a great question from the chat, which is this something akin to BCS? For those of you not familiar, that was the Business Connectivity Services, part of SharePoint. Was that 2013, I believe? I could say this is similar to that, but it is not going to be functionally equivalent, like one-for-one on that. BCS was really about being able to connect to an external data source and display that as a SharePoint list inside of SharePoint 2013, SharePoint Online, and other areas. Now, with Graph Connectors, we can ingest content in, but it's really not going to be about doing that real-time in the UI updates to that. Instead, it's going to be more of displaying this in a number of different capacities. So think of it more of like a one-way ingestion. We are looking at ways to do kind of a two-way sync. So if I delete an item somewhere inside of M365, I can also sync back to the source system. But today, this is truly strictly just a one-way import of content into Microsoft Graph to then actually power in different experiences. The other key difference, though, is also that inside of M365, we're showing in a lot of different areas. Not only do we have the same side of search hosts, so again, SharePoint, Office.com, Bing, we're also looking at adding support for areas like Teams, as well as Windows Desktop, so areas that BCS didn't really play in previously, as well as integrating with new platforms. Again, Viva Topics in terms of the Office.com recommendations and a couple of other areas. So there are some other ways to be able to integrate with us that go outside of what BCS supported. Now, swinging back to the demo on here. So here I've got this under application. I'm actually going to go ahead and get my access token for this. Now, I happen to have a whole bunch of my secrets for my environment already set up with this. So when we think about the client ID, the secret to actually go and authenticate for this, I've already plugged these into my environment. So when I go ahead and do the get new access token, go ahead and proceed. Go ahead and use this token. It's actually going to save it into a variable for me, so I can actually use this in further requests. And when I come down to like my get all collections, you can see here's the graph request that we're going to be firing off, graph.microsoft.com/v1 external/connections. Go ahead and send this request. And when I take a look at the bottom down here, here is my JSON payload return for this. You can see I've got 2 connections in the sample environment in here. And if I go over to my Search Administration Center, we can go over to data sources. You can see that those match up with the 2 connectors that I've created custom in this environment. There we go. Contessa BTJ files and BTJ test. And I can go ahead and take a look at some other things like get the schema for this. Go ahead and just grab the first schema that's out there. Again, great way to kind of validate what are all the properties that I have defined for this. Things like the ID for it, the title, what is the extension for the item that I'm pulling in, who's it created by, what was the created date time, last modified, and so forth. So I can actually go and validate what is that schema for this connection out there. If I want to go and update items out there, I can also do that with our simple puts on these. And with these, our payload can be either the full item itself, if you want to specify every single property that exists on that source system, or if you only want to do a partial update, you can do that as well. So a great way to have kind of flexibility in terms of, hey, I want to go and update the ACL and that access control list for this, or I only want to update maybe a couple of properties on this and not actually do the entire set of items that are out there. So if I go ahead and pull back just a simple item that's out there already, I've got here, let's say my item 3. And again, I'm using the same authorization token for all these different requests. So it's kind of a get that token once, be able to come back and run multiple queries that are out there. But here you can see one of my items. And again, I can see who is access for this, Item 3 actually has everyone in the tenant that can go and access this. Here's all those properties. So the nice part here is that not only can I ingest this content and be able to see it inside of the native experiences, if I'm in again, SharePoint, Office.com, inside of Bing, I can also use the API to go and actually render this content in my own custom UI. So if you have a third-party search portal, if you have an intranet, if you have some other kind of thing that you're trying to show the content in, great way to be able to leverage Microsoft Graph APIs, calling through these search APIs, pull that content back out and actually render this in multiple locations. So great way to see where we can surface this content in multiple different locations. And just show you this isn't smoke and mirrors, we'll actually pull up office.com. And I'll go ahead and search for just sample, literally the word, because that's in like all of my sample content, hint, hint. And if we go over here to that B2J files, you can see that, yes, there's like that sample item 3. And again, I have the permission so that all users can see this content. But because this user isn't actually in all the other groups that are out there, this user is not seeing items 1, 2, and 5. So great way to just kind of see that, yes, this is not smoke and mirrors. I'm actually seeing the content live inside of the system on here, showing up in one of my kind of major hosts out there for Office. Same thing would happen for SharePoint or for Bing, and soon the other hosts that are coming as well for Teams and for Windows Desktop. And that I see we're short on time, so I'm going to flip back over to our other slides. There we go. We'll present this over, and we'll wrap up with today's closing items. So a big thank you to all of our presenters today. Nick, thank you so much for the talk on the Graph Data Connect datasets. So I really appreciate you sharing more about the extending Teams apps to Outlook and Office.com, and to myself, talking a little bit about connectors, updates, and Postman samples. If you want to join into any of the other different community calls that we have out there, lots of great information. We have our own Microsoft 365 platform call. You can find more at aka.ms/m365-dev-call. Number of other different community calls as well, though, for adaptive cards, for identity, for Office add-ins, Power Platform, and more. You can find all the invites for all these at aka.ms/m365pnp. And as always, all of our community calls are recorded. You can find the recording within 24 hours on our YouTube channel, aka.ms/m365pnp/videos. Please follow along with us on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev or at M365pnp. We look forward to seeing you next week, April 26th, at our usual time, 8 to 9 Pacific time. We would love to have you join in. Please invite your friends, coworkers, and everyone else. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you for joining in, everyone.